Hey there friends, Hector here, and today I'm going to be showing you how you can improve your deadlift without actually having to deadlift. Today we're going to be going over the Zercher Squat. The Zercher Squat was made popular back in the 1930s by a very well-known lifter by the name of Ed Zercher. He was about 155 pounds and reportedly lifted almost 3.5 times his body weight, which was about 536 at 155. And so this lift was made very popular by him. He had a very unique squatting and deadlift style. So one of the really cool things about the Zercher deadlift is, for sumo deadlifters, this has a lot of great carryover because the pattern is pretty much similar to the sumo. But this is going to challenge you in the upper back, which is usually where a lot of us lose the deadlift. As soon as we start to pull, we can start to get this rounding in the upper back. So for some lifters, that's usually the weak point for many lifters, that upper back. So this is definitely going to challenge the upper back muscles, but also this is going to hit the abs really hard. And like I said, this is going to hit the posterior chains. They're going to get glutes, quads. It's even going to work your biceps by the nature of the way we load the bar up on our body. But one really cool thing about this compared to, like, let's say the back squat, is this loads you mostly the muscles in the front, the anterior chain. So this is gonna torture your biceps, chest, especially your abs, and of course this is gonna hit the upper back. So a lot of benefits here. There's a lot of carryover, like I said, to the sumo deadlift, and I think even just deadlift period. But it's a great way to get in some specialized variety and some ways to improve your deadlift, again, without having to deadlift. So without having to rack up tons of volume in deadlifting, which is, definitely want to get the volume in with your deadlift, but if you're trying to incorporate maybe some accessory work, again, I know I said I'm not a big advocate on accessory lifting, but if there was a lift, I would recommend spending some time in the Zercher. So there's a couple of ways that I'm going to show you how to load the Zercher up. So remember, this is an accessory lift. This is not something you would want to turn into like an actual all-out absolute lift. Like, let's say, I'm trying to, increase a 1 rep max of a Zercher. You can definitely do that, but that's not ideally what we want to use this for. We just want to use this to give us some accessory work, to really work the hips, really challenge the upper back muscles, and then really get the abs really strong. So setup number one that we're going to focus on is setting up in a rack, some kind of squat rack. And this will actually be the way that you can load the most weight, okay? So you can really rack up some pretty heavy weight by loading the bar on the body this way, because the bar is already elevated. So I highly recommend that you use some kind of sleeve covers, or I'm wearing a sweater. That way I don't have to worry about my skin pinching on the bar, and also for hygiene purposes, last thing you want is to maybe cut yourself on your arm and then you get blood on the bar. So mostly for hygiene, but you don't want to pinch the forearm skin. So what you're going to do is, I can actually probably bring this bar down a little bit lower, but we're going to start from here. So what you're going to do is you're going to get the bar in the crooks of the elbows just like this, okay? And what I like to do is there's a few things you can do with your hands here. You can clasp your hands together, or you can just make fists like this. I like to tend to just make my fists like so. You want to make sure you get your hips underneath the bar, feet about hip width, and then you're going to drive up and lock out, okay? So from here, you're going to get tight, brace, take a step back, and like I said, I probably could have set this bar a little bit lower, and this will be your setup here, just like so, okay? So I'm going to rack the bar. All right? So getting the bar in the crooks of the elbows, getting your hips under, and you'll probably, like I said, you'll want this bar probably be a little bit lower than this is, because you essentially want to get up underneath like so, and then be able to elevate the bar about, I don't know, maybe 2-3 inches. That way you can walk back. So what we're going to do now is we're going to transition to how to actually perform the Zercher squat, and I'm going to show you the second setup.
Alright guys, so now we're going to be going into the second portion of the setup, And we're going to be starting from the floor here. So you'll take a traditional sumo deadlift stance. This is actually a close sumo stance. And you're basically just going to deadlift the bar. And what we're going to do is we're going to bring the bar to our knees, just like so. And you won't be able to do this with as heavy as a weight that you'll be able to do when starting from the squat rack. But this is definitely a way that you can work on setting up. And this is basically setting up from the bottom up. So you noticed here as I deadlift the bar, I bring it up to my knees, and then I'll squat down and I will set up my forearms. From here, I'll keep my chest up, and I'll make tight fists. I'll take a deep breath, I'll brace through my abs, and then I'll come up to the top for the lockout. And then I'm going to repeat the squat. I'm going to initiate the movement with my hips, just like as if I were sitting back to set up for my deadlift. So I would initiate by sitting back and then down. And what I do here, you can see that I actually allow the bar to rest right on the top of my thighs. I use that as a safety measure to ensure that, for one, I know that I've broken parallel, and two, that I don't need to go all the way down into a full deep rock bottom squat. That's not what I'm trying to achieve here. I'm trying to get the maximal stretch out of my glutes and hamstrings, and again, trying to keep my posture up. So if you look at my posture, I'm really working on my upper back and the abs, and this, you'll definitely feel this in the abs. But one of the unique things about this Zercher deadlift, the Zercher squat here, is if you look at the bottom position where I'm at, it almost looks like I'm doing a goblet squat, right? So imagine I'm holding a kettlebell by the horns, and it looks like I'm doing a goblet squat, right? And so, again, this is really going to work the abs, the biceps, the glutes, hamstrings. This is going to hit everything that you would hit with the traditional sumo deadlift or just a deadlift, period. And then you'll just unrack by bringing the arms out and then dropping the bar to the floor. So here we're going to do a lateral view. And I'm just doing a simple deadlift here, setting my knees, and then I'm going to start to adjust and get my arms underneath as normal. I'll make tight fists, and then I'll brace, and I'll come up for the lockout. Okay, all that is normal. And then I initiate the movement by sitting back with my hips. So you see I initiated the movement with my hips first. My hips sit back, and then I'll start to go down into more of a squat, because it is still a squat, okay? It is still a squat, but I'm initiating the movement not with my knees. I'm not necessarily initiating the movement with my knees here, okay? Notice that my knees pretty much stay where they need to be, okay? They pretty much stay still. And then this movement here is I initiate the movement with my hips. And then I'll start to descend down. And at this moment, I'm really feeling it in the abs. And then I'll come up to the lockout as normal. Okay, and then I'll go through the typical volume. I usually do about 3 to 5 reps. And this is actually a really light load, mostly for demonstration purposes. I think I have probably 50 kilos on the bar, which is about 110 pounds. So I'm not using a really heavy weight here just for demo, but you can really work up to, for myself, I've worked up to about 300 pounds, which is a pretty challenging weight for the Zercher. So again, goal of the Zercher is to really just kind of hit a lot of those weak points, right? The upper back, the glutes, the hamstrings, really hit the abs. The goal of the Zercher is not to build a 1 rep max on the Zercher. So, and then you just dismount. You dismount the exact same way as I showed you with the frontal view. Now this last piece here, this is a pretty advanced exercise. And this is basically taking the Zercher all the way to the floor and setting up. This is what is known as the Zercher deadlift. So this is actually a great exercise for contact athletes like grapplers, wrestlers, MMA fighters, BJJ guys, is because oftentimes we're in this compromised position. Maybe we have a submission that's applied to us, or we have to pick somebody up from a really low position and literally just pick them up. So being strong in this position is really going to pay dividends for you if you're a BJJ guy, a grappler of some sort, wrestler, MMA guy. Is really going to help improve your posture. Now you do have to have a pretty decent amount of hip mobility to get down low, to get in the right position. And then from here, I'm just basically deadlifting that bar straight to the top. And you would probably think, well, man, that looks like it's bad for your back. Actually, my back is in actually a really safe position here. Well, I'm going to do a lateral view here in just a second, but I'll do a live run through here, and I'll just knock out a few reps. Again, this is going to be really tough on the abs, and is really going to strengthen your back in that awkward position, which is where we need to really be strong, right? So not everything is always going to be symmetrical and some kind of grappling situation, but this is definitely going to really help strengthen your back in that position. So I go through about, like I said, 3 to 5 repetitions, and I'll work my way up to probably about maybe 200 pounds. I don't go really heavy on this type of deadlift, again, because I'm not trying to build a 1 rep max on the Zercher deadlift. And then here you can see just a lateral view of me getting set. You notice that right before I actually deadlift, believe it or not, my back is actually pretty safe here. It's nice and straight. There is a little bit of rounding here at the upper part of my back, kind of in this area, but that all starts to straighten out as I start to ascend to the top. And here, if you notice, I'm pretty much almost in a full-on hinge here. My shoulders are still slightly above my hips, and my hips are above the knees. Okay, boom, and I achieve a lockout. I'll come down, I'll drop the bar and reset, and I'll get back into my squat, and I'm pumping and really just kind of jamming myself into the position I need to be in. And then I crank my chest up just as if I were for the deadlift, and you can see here as I drive through the legs, my glutes and hamstrings kick in right about, see here, my glutes and hamstrings will kick in right about here to get that weight moving. And you can see that my back is in a pretty safe position here. There's nothing dangerous about this lift at all, but it's going to have crazy carryover to your actual deadlift. And I'll just go live here to finish off. So I go through my setup, set up the arms, pump my hips to get in the right position, and take off.
All right, friends, there you have it. That is the Zercher deadlift. So we went over 3 different variations, 3 progressions, I guess you could say. We went over how to set up from the squat rack. Okay, then we went over how to set up from the floor by deadlifting it to the knees and then setting yourself up. And then lastly, we went over a little more advanced variation, and that's the Zercher deadlift. So this is going to come in really handy for grapplers, MMA fighters, BJJ guys. A lot of times we're in compromised positions. If we're caught in a submission, we've got to sometimes be able to pick our opponent up to escape. So having a really strong back in a compromised position and having good adequate hip mobility is definitely going to pay dividends by practicing this exercise. So that's all I got for you guys today. If you enjoyed today's technique of the week, be sure to leave a comment below if you have any questions, or if you just have a comment in general, leave something in the comment section below. If you enjoyed this tutorial, I have an ebook called Deadlift Blueprint, where I will take you through step by step and teach you how to build a bigger and stronger deadlift without tons of assistance exercises, belts, straps, and even wraps. So go ahead, I left all the information in the description below. Again, thanks for tuning in. This is Hector with StrongestHec.com with this week's Technique of the Week.